What's up, squad? It's your Squid. This video is brought to you by Milkman Grooming. If you want an awesome beard like mine or a better beard than mine, use their products. They've got beard care products across the range, from oil, balms, brushes, things to shave with, all of that sort of jazz. Use code SQUID, you'll get a chunk off as well. And I get a kickback. So do me a solid, Milkman Grooming. You'll find the link in the description under Milkman Grooming. Go give it a click, go check out their products and use code SQUID. Let's get to the video. Thanks for clicking on the title or the thumbnail or whatever it was that led you here, guys. If this is the first time you've seen me, poke around the channel. Don't decide if you like me based off this one, but yeah, poke around, watch some videos from a couple of my playlists, and then please do me a solid and hit subscribe. You know how YouTube works, you know how I earn money. Do me a solid and hit the subscribe and watch a whole bunch more of my content. This video is about Collingwood versus Port Adelaide, all right? And so most of my viewers are American, and I'm going to be talking about Australian rules football. So I'm going to cover the basics and talk to you about it as if you have no idea about anything to do with the sport. I'm going to cover everything, and then I'm going to tell you my opinion. So let's just get straight into it, right? So this is Eddie Maguire, and that's David Koch. Not to be confused with the American businessman David Koch. That's an Australian businessman, David Koch. I've written a whole bunch of notes here, so if I'm not looking at you specifically, it's because I'm looking at these. Join my Patreon and you'll see the photos specifically of the notes. But yeah, long story short, Eddie Maguire is a radio presenter and sports journo. He was Collingwood president up until very recently. He got the boot for various racist gaffes, but he's still the de facto president, you know what I mean? Like, he's a media personality, he's been a sports journalist for decades, he's been a commentator for decades, he's the face of Collingwood, and he will probably always be the face of Collingwood from a media standpoint, right? David Koch is a financial journo, he's a journo as well, he's a breakfast TV host. They're both in the media, and they're both very heavily involved with their football clubs. As I said, Eddie was the president. Kochie is the president of the Port Adelaide Football Club. And they are publicly stoushing over the matter of what Port Adelaide will wear as their Guernsey. And I'm going to say jersey for the rest of this video, but let it be known that the word is Guernsey. Like one of these things, the sleeveless ones, Aussie rules, it's Guernsey, not jersey. But because all of my followers, or the vast majority of my followers, are American, I'm going to say jersey, so just go with that. This is the Collingwood jersey. That's the Port Adelaide jersey that they usually wear. That's their home jersey. But this is the one that they want to wear when they play specifically against the other Adelaide teams. So they're playing their local derby. It's called the Showdown. And they want to wear that jersey as a result. But Collingwood and the AFL aren't letting them, because that's Collingwood's jersey. Black and white stripes are intellectual property owned by Collingwood. So now let's have a bit of a background look at it, right, and see why it is such a beef. Okay, so the AFL, right? So the AFL is a competition in Australia. It's the best Aussie rules competition. It's the premier Aussie rules competition, right? However, hasn't always been one central league. A bit like the NFL, there were a lot of different leagues that were competing against each other. So there was the VFL, which is the Victorian Football League. That's Victoria. There was the SANFL, which was the South Australian and Northern Territory Football League. That's South Australia and the Northern Territory there. And there was the WAFL, which was the Western Australian Football League, right? And that's the Western Australia right there. The VFL started in 1896, the SANFL started in 1877, and the WAFL started in 1885. So the VFL was actually a bit late to the party while comparing all three, okay? Port Adelaide started in the SANFL. Collingwood started in the VFL. They both were the Magpies, okay? So they were both... that's a magpie, by the way. If you're not familiar with a magpie, I'm not sure if there are magpies here in America. I haven't seen a magpie. They're part of the corvid family, like they're corvids, like blue jays and crows and all of that sort of jazz, but yeah, I don't know if there's actually specific magpies here in America or not. Let me know in the comments section. Anyway, the VFL, this is the point I'm trying to make. The VFL did not merge with other leagues, like in the case of the NFL. They didn't come together and create one big league. In the 1990s, the VFL changed their name to the AFL and got some expansion clubs in from other states. Okay, so that's an important factor to remember. Okay, so in 1989, the VFL expanded, changed name to the AFL. They did not merge. The AFL is what was the VFL. It is not a combination of, and it is not Sandful and VFL and Waffle all added together. It's VFL now on a national scale. The Sandful still exists in South Australia. The Waffle still exists in Western Australia. It wasn't an amalgamation like with the NFL, you know what I mean? The way the VFL expanded to the AFL was they brought in a team from Western Australia called West Coast. They brought in a team in Brisbane, at the time called the Brisbane Bears, but that was a clusterfuck, which I can do a video on eventually as well if you'd like. And they ended up being the Brisbane Lions because they merged with another poor club. But like the long story short is, from the very beginning of the VFL in the 1800s, this was Collingwood's jumper, and it never changed. It has never changed significantly. In fact, this is the history of the Collingwood jersey, right? Or the Collingwood Guernsey, what Collingwood wear in their home games, that's the history of it. In around the 90s or the early 2000s, they changed from predominantly white with black stripes to predominantly black with white stripes, which sounds ridiculous and not like a change at all, because that is ridiculous and it's not that big a change at all, really, but you can see it in that thing there. And so now I think you're probably understanding where I'm getting to, right? The last few weeks, actually before we do that, this is the history of the Port Adelaide jersey, right? So much like the Collingwood jersey, this is the history from right back to the start of the Sandful, what they wore and when they wore it. Now, you, like me, might be looking at and going, they didn't wear the black and white for a while there at the start. They were wearing pink and blue, they were wearing just blue, they were wearing blue and white, and you would be right to say so. They did not wear what they refer to as the prison bar black and white striped jersey until the early 1900s. Admittedly, that is 100 or so years of history that, you know, a club, it's understandable that a club would want to recognise that. However, the Sandful history of the Port Adelaide club is not the history of the Port Adelaide club that is in the AFL. I'm going to look at my notes here, because in the Sandful, they were called the Port Adelaide Magpies. In the VFL, they were called the Collingwood Magpies. When the VFL expanded, Port Adelaide, like, there was a big beef, and the Sandful teams, like, they wanted to rival the VFL. They were going to have their own competition at one point. They didn't get the funds for it, and the Sandful League and South Australia in general were filthy at Port Adelaide. When Port Adelaide, like, they turned their back on that state and they were like, we want to play in the VFL. Before it became the AFL, they were like, all right, you guys are expanding, we want to be in that as well. And, you know, there was some back and forth. It didn't quite work for a while, but eventually Port Adelaide were allowed into the VFL/AFL under a new name called the Port Adelaide Power. The Port Adelaide Magpies still existed in the Sandful, still exist to this day in the Sandful. A new club was created called the Port Adelaide Power. This is the first jersey they ever wore. Again, I know, Guernsey. I'm going to stop mentioning the two differences, but this is the first jersey that Port Adelaide wore. Yeah, incidentally, it's the one they won a flag with in 2004. They won the whole comp in that jersey in 2004. If you want to talk about history, that's the only premiership that club can say is theirs. They, on all their websites and in all their background and everything, they claim the Sandful premierships as well. But as I've said, Port Adelaide Magpies, Port Adelaide Power, separate clubs at the time, okay? They have this whole thing now where, like, I'll put a thing there, I'll stop for a second, right? I might mute it while I do it, but they have this thing where they're like, they play an In Excess song and it's like, never tear us apart, we're the one club, you know, like Magpies and Power, we're the one club. And like, that's all well and good for recent years and for remembering your history in a mental capacity. But it's a fact that you weren't the one club for a very long time. They weren't the one club for a long time because South Australia were filthy on Port Adelaide for trying to do the dirty on the Sandful and help the VFL prosper, right? So they come into the AFL as the Port Adelaide Power. Their colours are teal, silver and black, or teal, white and black, okay? As I said, this is their current home jersey. This is the one they want a premiership in. You can see their colours. Those are their colours because they joined the competition that Collingwood was in and they were already the Magpies. They were already black and white stripes. Recently, David Koch, has been trying to make it so that the Port Adelaide Football Club can wear this jersey, a modern-day adaptation of their Prison Bar Magpies jersey, in showdowns, which is what they call the local derby against the Adelaide Football Club. But, quite rightly, the Collingwood Football Club has been like, hey, those are our colours, that's our trademark, and the AFL has stood by Collingwood being like, well, yeah, no, your colours are teal and black, not white and black to Port Adelaide. And this is where my opinion comes in, not fact, right? The last few years, Koshi has been very outspoken about it, and he says it's not going to go away, and he wants to acknowledge the history of the club. And you know, putting those two next to each other for a second, the history of the Collingwood jumper and the history of the Port Adelaide jumper, like, they're not all that different. But they're not all that the same either. As long as they're not playing each other, it's pretty evident that those aren't the same team. You know what I mean? But at the same time, intellectual property is a thing. So, in my opinion, this jersey is the one that the Port Adelaide Power want to play with, right? And they want to play in for showdowns and you know, you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. Once you let them play in it in showdowns, they'll play in it in other games as well. That's how business works, right? And if they just changed it, right, from this to that, or to that, then they'd be fine. And, you know, Port Adelaide, give me a call. I'll sell you that design for fucking cheap, right? Like, you can have it for cheap. I made those two up. Either one of them, you can have for super cheap. Just pay me first. But yeah, it's all you got to do is add teal and Port Adelaide. It's not a big drama, right? At the moment, it's a big talking piece in Australia because Port Adelaide tried. They tried to wear this Guernsey for a showdown. They weren't allowed, and so they did this after the game, right? They wore this one in the game this week or last week, whenever it was, and then after the game, before they went into the change rooms for the after the game shots and the singing the team song and all that, they changed Guernseys into that one. They weren't allowed to wear it on the field, so they wore it into the change rooms as a big middle finger to the AFL and to Collingwood. And if I was Collingwood or the AFL, I'd be giving a big middle finger back and suing them. As far as I'm concerned, like, it doesn't matter where your intellectual... Like, it doesn't matter if you're starting the game or if you're in the change rooms. If the AFL have said you can't wear that Guernsey, you can't wear that Guernsey, and they should get a massive fine for it. And Collingwood should sue them. As far as I'm concerned, that's their property. You know, you wouldn't have fucking Liverpool attacking Manchester United being like, I want to wear those colours. It's just unheard of, you know what I mean? Like, the Bills wouldn't sue Green Bay to be like, oh, I want to wear green and yellow, you know what I mean? Like, it's Mickey Mouse stuff by the AFL, and by Port Adelaide specifically in the AFL. Matter of fact is, you're not the Port Magpies, you're the Port Power, yeah? You can sing as many songs as you like, but you guys are not the same. You have one premiership in your club's history. It was in 2004. You wore that jumper. That should be your heritage strip. That should be the history that you froth over. My opinion is Port Adelaide are, on a colossal scale, making themselves look stupid, making the AFL look like a Mickey Mouse organisation. Like, imagine if something like this happened in the NFL. It wouldn't. None of the major sports here in America, this would happen. And it makes Australian sport look subpar, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. Like I said at the start, these are the two Guernseys that I created for Port. Let me know what you think about that. And, yeah. Big shout out goes to these guys, these mad dogs, the patrons of my channel, the financial supporters. I like money. Turning some of theirs into mine on a monthly basis helps me, like, eat and stuff. So if you want to help me out and turn some of yours into mine on a monthly basis as well, link in the description. That would be dope. Also, you can buy Milkman stuff, buy some weed stuff with Vance Global, and buy some cool shades with Koalaty Sunglasses. Help me out. That'd be sick. Failing all of that, I'm going to keep making some videos, and I'll see you when I look at you. You'll see me when you look at me. Thanks for watching.